Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome back to another new video. Today I wanted to talk about trying to play games on Linux, and not just games that are meant to be run on Linux, all the games, the Windows games, and everything that you would want to play on Linux. Apparently, this is relatively easy to do, and I haven't made a video in a while, largely because I've been playing more games than I should have. So, this seems like a great place to pick back up here. Real quick, I've got an affiliate deal with VPN now, Pure VPN. If you're in the market for a VPN, I don't think I need to tell anyone watching this channel what a VPN does, but if you're in the market for one, I've got a kill switch built in, they've got a third party there, auditing and making sure that they're not keeping logs or anything, so it seems like a good service you can trust, so yeah, hey. Anyways, I guess before we talk about actually playing games on Linux, the best thing to do would be to move over to Windows for a moment, where most of the games that we're going to try to play are built to run. And if I do have to use a PC, I'd rather do it with a whiskey in my hand. So I think I drink Ardbeg in a video, and it only seems fair to throw a bone to the Lafroig people. I like both quite a bit. Ardbeg and Lafroig are only really similar in the fact that they are Isla scotches that have an insane cult following. People really like them a lot, but the smokiness between the two is quite a bit different, quite a bit interesting. I recommend getting them both. If I had to pick a favorite, I wouldn't, because I don't want to piss anyone off. So, the games that I thought we could test here, I don't have a huge game library. I play a few games. I mostly just play, like, Skyrim, honestly. So, we are going to test Skyrim, good old standard DirectX game, just because that's sort of what I play, so it's good to have numbers. Now my system I'm using right now, I've got a, I'm gonna forget, it's a 6-core Ryzen CPU. It's not the Ryzen, why doesn't it tell me? Oh, the 2600X. 32 gigs of RAM, so RAM shouldn't be an issue at all. And then I've got a 710 that I just used to run a monitor off to the side. The main CPU here is a GTX 1050 Ti, because it's basically one of the only graphics cards I could get my hands on at the moment. I picked a really terrible time to build a new PC, but honestly, it's not a bad card. Most of the games I throw at it, it can run at 60 FPS or more. So I've got Skyrim, I'm gonna run just because I like that game. I played a lot. It's good to get some FPS numbers. I've got Rise of the Tomb Raider. There we go. Shadow of the Tomb Raider, not Rise of the Tomb Raider, my bad. And the reason this game is because it's fairly high performant. If I put the settings on like the highest possible with anti-aliasing and everything up to I get pretty reasonably down below 60 FPS. It's one of the few games I own that sort of has trouble maintaining a playable frame rate. I've got Doom, mainly just because I believe it runs on Vulkan, not DirectX, and we'll get into why that's important when we get back over to Linux. And then I'll probably run Minecraft. Oh, and then I've got MAKC. This is actually a pretty good game if none of you guys have ever played it. I played it on PS4, or the Xbox One or whatever when it first came out. And if you like the movie, you'll probably like the game. But the great thing about this one is it's actually built to run on Linux, so it should work out of the box with no issues whatsoever. So it'd just be kind of nice to see if there's any performance difference in between Linux and Mac using a game that's built to run on both systems. So let's go ahead and get started here. I'll go ahead and just launch Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Now, if you're concerned about the screen recording, I did actually do some tests with Shadow of the Tomb Raider and a couple of other games to see what kind of difference in FPS I was getting with the screen recorder on and with the screen recorder off, and for whatever reason it wasn't that big of a difference. I'm not really sure why. It seems like it would make a difference, but I've got the numbers from the benchmarks, and like the difference between me running the benchmark with the screen recorder on and with the screen recorder off was like slim to none. So there is a way to do a benchmark here. I think we need to go over to options and then maybe into display and graphics. And just for kicks, we're gonna go over to graphics, make sure we've got everything set to the highest possible settings here, and then we can go ahead and just run the benchmark and see what kind of numbers we're getting. I've got the Steam FPS counter on here, but also I think the benchmark shows you the FPS as you play, so. Okay, so we started off real low there. Yeah, we're down below, okay, now we're getting back up to 30. So, yeah, it's pretty consistently below 30 FPS. So, which again, it's not a big deal if you bump the graphics settings down a bit. The game runs fine, it's totally playable. But at max settings with the anti-aliasing and everything turned up, it's kind of really pushing us here. Yeah, this is the kind of game I guess you wouldn't really be able to play at max settings on the 1050 Ti, which, by the way, totally open to buying a better graphics card, but I don't want to pay $900 for it. And oh, my fans are ramping up a bit now. I can feel it. Oh, okay. Now we're getting up below 46, 46, 45, 44. Okay, that's a little more reasonable. I wonder, I didn't think there'd be that big of a difference in between the different scenes. Can we go ahead and just end the demo? I think we kind of get the idea here. That's Shadow of the Tomb Raider. We're looking at about 30 FPS at max settings. So let's go ahead and run, I guess we'll run Skyrim. That would be the thing I'm second most interested in seeing. And I want to make sure I got the settings right in here. The last time I played it, I accidentally bumped it up to 4K, and it was like chugging really hard. And I'm like, what's going on? So 1080p, ultra settings. Oh yeah, all of these are at 1080p. I should have mentioned that. So go ahead and hit play. Getting 60 FPS in the menu. That's always a good sign. Let's see what we're doing here. We got down to, oh yeah, we are in a fight. Let me see if I can just like maybe put my weapons away and they'll stop. Yeah, okay. Wow, that is quite the bounty. Okay, so up here in Solitude, which isn't the most demanding part of the game, we're getting 60 FPS. Okay, maybe I'll just switch to a different save game, because this is like, I can't fight people and look at the FPS at the same time. So Whiterun in the cities, we're getting 60 FPS-ish, which is, I mean, I think it just maxes out there. So everywhere we go, I was going to try to find a more demanding environment. I think really the best way to kind of hit the game hard, unless you can get into like a dragon attack or something, or any sort of intensive attack, is if you go to some of the areas that have more snow and stuff. So we could probably just go to like Winterhold, which should have a lot of snow particles and things being simulated all at the same time, which ideally should put us in a sort of rough situation. So yeah, we are getting like a little below 60 FPS here, 57, 54, 55-ish. Yeah, it looks like we're pretty much set to hit 60 FPS or super close to that the whole time. I already knew that. I don't know why I'm acting like it was a surprise to me. Let's go ahead and do Mad Max. Now, this isn't exactly the most demanding game either. It should be a totally decent test of our graphic ability, and because of the fact that it's supposed to be built to run on Linux and PC, I really want to get some numbers here just to see if there's any difference between the two. You know, we're getting 60 FPS. Unfortunately, there's not a great way I know of to sort of max out or, you know, try to get into an environment where we're really pushing the system hard here. There's not a benchmark as far as I know, but let's get into a little bit of a fight here. And I don't really know the controls. I usually play this one with a controller. Yeah, so we look like we're pretty well locked at 60 FPS. You wouldn't think it would be that difficult to just like keep an eye on the FPS and play the game at the same time, but I feel like when you're playing a game, you get really hyper focused on whatever's going on into it, and it would be hard to sort of just all of a sudden switch it up. Okay, that's cool. So go ahead and exit the main menu. I don't think we ever really drop below 60 there, so I'm on a lunch break, so I probably shouldn't drink much more whiskey, but maybe just one more. It was a small glass, so we'll do just a little bit more. Probably not going to be an issue. And then I wanted to test out Doom. So we'll do the campaign. Let's go over to the settings here. Make sure we are at max settings. Overall quality, we're going to go to ultra. I don't totally remember the controls here. Okay, I know you don't take fall damage. That was a bad guy. I don't really know where I'm going. I'm trying to get into a little bit of a fight here so we can... Oh yeah, here's some guys. Looks fairly standard. 60 FPS. Yeah, I don't think we're really going to dip below it here. I forgot how to do the melee, because I know the melee attack in this game is freaking badass, but I forgot what the button was. Yeah, okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Looks like we're going to hit 60 FPS. And that was everything I really wanted to test. I guess we could fire up Minecraft just to see sort of what sort of numbers we're getting there. I don't see why if we hit 60 FPS and everything else, we wouldn't hit it in Minecraft. Let's go options, video settings, graphics are on. Ooh, fabulous. I didn't even know that was an option. Screen shaders for drawing weather. Yeah, that looks like what we want. Fancy, brightness on full. I know that can make a difference. Entity shadows. Yeah, it looks like everything's basically right where we want it to be. So if we're ever going to max out a CPU, a GPU in Minecraft, I think this is going to be the way to do it. So 60... I think some people said like going into the nether is more GPU intensive. So in theory, we could maybe like build a portal. Okay, no, that's stupid. I think we've got the numbers we need. Basically, everything is 60 FPS. The only exception being Shadow of the Tomb Raider. which we were getting 30 to just a little bit below 30 FPS the whole time in it. But now we can actually try to get some games running, which apparently everything that we need is going to be built into the just standard Steam app that's already available on Linux. So I'm going to go ahead here and just sudo pacman -s Steam should install Steam. We just want, what is it doing here? I'm using a NVIDIA graphics card, so I'm going to hit option 2 here, the lib32 with the NVIDIA utilities. Go ahead and install that. Okay, cool. So this is Steam. Mad Max should work right out of the box. Mad Max and apparently also Doom. I didn't know that Doom would also work. And then the next thing that we need to do is we need to enable a way to install the DirectX games, the ones that are only built to run on PC. So you can see if I come over here by default and I try to install Skyrim, by default, nothing's going to happen. What I need to do is come up here to Steam, go over to settings, and then while we're here, we can go ahead and come over to in-game and turn on our little FPS counter. That way we can, see what we're working with here. I'm going to hit it to high contrast, make sure we can see it easily in the video. We'll put it in the top right. And then if we go to, I don't know exactly where the option, I think Steam Play might be where it is. Enable Steam Play for all other titles. So you can use the Steam Play to test games in your library that have not been verified with a supported compatibility tool. This is what we want. Proton, as I understand it, is basically a tool that Steam has worked on that is essentially a DirectX emulator for Linux, which is why I thought it was important to test games that run on DirectX by default, and the ones like Doom that run on Vulkan, and the ones like Mad Max, and I'm not sure what game engine it uses, but that work with Linux out of the box. So what happens when we enable Proton, which we just did by just, clicking and making sure we have Proton Experimental selected, what we're doing is we're installing an emulator here. If I come back over to my library here, I should now be able to click on and install Skyrim. Maybe we go to settings, go to properties for the actual game, and we just click on compatibility, and oh, okay, now the install thing popped up. So we'll go ahead and hit install here. It should install, I guess, the same as any other game does. It's sort of hard to say. And then I guess the next thing we need to do is come and look at Shadow of the Tomb Raider and see if we can even install that demo again. So the demo apparently is only available on Windows, and I can't just force it to install, which is a real shame. Let's go ahead and see what we can do here. I guess we'll start off with Skyrim. Let's go ahead and play here, and the game will launch with Steam Play. Sounds great. I guess it's gonna have to download some stuff. That seems about right. It has been a day here, so I've switched over to a new whiskey. I've got Wild Turkey 101. This is a fantastic bourbon. If you're looking for a good bourbon to start with, this is, I think, easy to recommend. It's got enough, it's 101 proof, 50.5% alcohol, so it's got a high enough alcohol percentage that it's got some character. It's got all the notes that you would get from really any bourbon. Apple pie, brown sugar, vanilla, corn, all the simple, great bourbon notes that make people like bourbon, but they're really well balanced into one bottle, and nothing seems to sort of take over. It's just like a great little sample. It's like a charcuterie board put into a whiskey bottle, and it's phenomenal. And it's also cheap as hell. Okay, so this is Skyrim's sort of standard setup. It's like, oh, hey, we'll detect your video hardware and see what kind of settings you want to use. And it says it set me to low quality for some reason. Okay, that's fine. So let's go to the options here and go 1080p, set everything to ultra. Okay, now we're in. I guess we'll just go ahead and hit continue and jump right into the game. We are out here, snow, particles, kind of the worst case scenario, and we're doing 54, 55 it says, but this does look choppy as hell, I gotta be honest with you. According to my FPS counter, we're doing 59, but this looks really, really choppy to me. It says we're locked at 60, but dude, that does not look like 60 FPS. Now we're down to 53, 56. Maybe let's fast travel somewhere else. Same situation here, 57, 58, right around 60. And we got some rain particles there, so that's nice. That looks good. This has got to be coming through on the screen recorder, because it really does look choppy as hell. No, I don't buy that. That's not 60. There's no way. I don't know what's going on here. It does seem to be working well, though. Okay, so now it's telling me 47, 46, 49. That I can buy. I could believe that this is maybe 46 FPS. Maybe I could try reinstalling my graphics card driver, because that is another factor that I didn't even mention, is there might be some differences in between the driver that's available for this graphics card on Windows and the one that I'm getting on Linux. Yeah, I buy this as 60. That looks like 60 to me. Yeah. So there is a very obvious difference to me. It doesn't really matter what the FPS counter's saying. This is quite a bit different. I would say that's a 20 to 30% difference. I mean, if we're getting basically locked at 60, now we're back down to 40 on Linux, that's a significant difference in performance. See, look at this. Look at me running, and it's telling me, oh, you're at 50 FPS. There is no way that's 50 FPS. I mean, honestly, this isn't so bad. I think I would just lower the settings a bit and get a decent playable thing. And like I said, I'm in the market for a better GPU anyway, so I'm honestly more just impressed that it's working at all. I think we get the idea here. We're getting a pretty reasonable loss in performance, but it's still what I would consider to be totally playable. I'm honestly impressed that it worked without a hiccup. Doom and Mad Max are still downloading. The only other game that I have that should run by default on Linux is Minecraft, and it just runs through Java. I'm just using the standard Java version, so it runs on macOS, it runs on Windows, it runs on Linux. No problem. It should be totally downloaded and everything now. Go ahead and hit play here. Okay, so here we go. One of the reasons I want to load the save is because I have some areas on this map that should really tax the CPU a bit more. When we loaded Minecraft before, we were getting 60F pretty consistently, but there wasn't really anything to challenge it. We were just in an open field. Nothing was going wrong here. But now we can really try to push it. So if I look out this window, 60 FPS, no problem. If I come over here and look at the fire where we have particles being generated, we're actually also hitting 60 FPS. Okay, let's go somewhere where I know we can really challenge things. I've got a chicken farm over here, and dude, if you have like a ton of chickens, it's gonna go crazy. So this is gonna be wild. So I'm out here looking off into nothing, 60 FPS. Now I'm gonna look at my chickens, 29. That literally cut the FPS in half. Look at the field, 60. Look at the chickens. That's insanity. I have no idea if this is true or not, but someone told me that going into the nether is a little more taxing. This is another, yeah, 60 FPS. Yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah, so this is totally playable. So, we're looking at 60, looks like basically the same performance here that we were getting on Windows, which is nice. And it doesn't feel super choppy, like this feels pretty smooth. I'm not sure how it's being translated to the screen recorder, but what I'm looking at looks like 60 FPS. It says 60 FPS. I'm gonna try to get into a little fight here, get a little action going on, see if maybe that we can push it a bit. We're getting down to maybe 54 is the lowest I've seen so far. Again, I know there's gonna be an impulse to criticize my game playing skills in the comments. And I'll be the first to admit I'm not the best gamer in the world, but keep in mind I'm trying to also watch the FPS and game at the same time. I think I saw it dip down to like 40s there for a second, high 40s, mid 40s. But overall, every time I look up there, we're getting 55 to 60 FPS. So I mean, I'm ready to say this is basically at parity with what was going on at Windows. I mean, maybe there's a tiny bit of performance difference. Oh, yep, I saw it dip down below 50 there again. Well, we're really in a firefight here. Huh. So, I don't know, maybe the performance is a little bit worse again. This is totally playable. So, let's go ahead and just hop out of that one. Go ahead and quit the desktop. I guess it's probably fair to say that's at parity with Windows. I don't know. And then the other thing we wanted to test here was Mad Max. So, let's go ahead and give that a shot. And I guess we'll just resume from where we left off when we were playing on Windows. This is definitely different again. Like, this is a considerably lower quality. We're getting a definite amount less here. I mean, I would say 45 to 50 so far. And again, this isn't really quite to the point that I would be like, oh, this is unplayable. I don't even want to play this game. Let's get into a fight here and see how we do. I think we're pretty well maintaining 45 to 50-ish. That's definitely different than Windows. That's a performance drop. Now, I guess the question becomes whether or not that performance drop is due to the way that the games are built and the developers spending less time making sure that the games run on Linux. If it's just an issue in the case of like Skyrim and Lego Star Wars, obviously the Proton emulation seems to be adding some amount of overhead. But for games like Mad Max and Doom that are supposed to run on Linux out of the box, I suppose the question is whether that's something up with the way that the games are being developed, or is there an issue with the GeForce driver? Because I mean, the drivers that you get on Windows and the drivers that you get on Linux are certainly different. They update at different times. They're on different version numbers. They're completely different drivers. Some of them aren't even made by NVIDIA. They're third-party drivers. So that's an interesting question. I'm not really sure how to get to the bottom of that and figure out exactly what the deal would be. I forgot how you're supposed to kill these guys too. So yeah, I mean, in summation, I suppose, gaming on Linux, seems to be very easy. That was incredibly straightforward. It was honestly easier than I was expecting it to be, if I'm being honest with you. But I mean, honestly, this was a super easy process. Is there a difference in performance? Absolutely. And it does seem like still, if you want to play games, you're gonna get a better experience on Windows. Does that necessarily mean that you should game on Windows? I don't know. I mean, it seems to me, I still have a Windows install or a Mac install on all the systems I use. The new PC I've just built dual boots Windows and Linux because I haven't found an NLE that I like on Linux. So if I already have Windows installed, it stands to reason that maybe, you know, just swap over to Windows and play games there. Because I mean, other than the fact that you have to use Windows, oh yuck, it's disgusting, you're going to get a better experience almost always. At least in my now limited experience with gaming on Linux here. Depending on the game, I think it makes a lot of sense to just like, why would I reboot and go over to Windows if I can just fire up and play Doom or whatever here? I mean, maybe I have to drop the graphic quality a bit. That's not the end of the world. You know, as long as I'm still having a good time with it, we'll see. We'll see. I think I'll have to report back later, but hey, thanks for watching the video, everybody. See you in the next one.